live.
Nice. Well, hello and welcome everybody to the 23rd.
Good man. Good man. He finally got it.
I looked it up. I made sure. 23rd episode of Hell in a Handbasket. So it's been a freaking crazy 2 weeks for both of us, actually. So we unfortunately, we're lucky to be able to even record today because I'm freaking exhausted. I know Nanya's been going through the rigmarole. So if we didn't record it today, we'd have to wait another freaking week. So, and the thing is that so much shit has happened. So much stuff has happened. And it's like hard to know what exactly to cover. So what I would propose doing is I'm looking at these Ukrainian peace talks, and I want to look a little bit at the background for what they could mean and what the positions are of the two sides, and kind of like a little bit of the run up to all this stuff, right? Not just the run up in terms of the drone attacks and the terrorist attacks on the bridges and trains, which I think is also part of the run up to those negotiations, but mostly more than that, the everything else that was happening in the back. So I guess, could you share the screen that I have there?
Oh, sorry. Sure. Which one?
It should be only one right now.
What, the
that I have
article?
Yep.
Alrighty.
Okay, so start with this. This is Bloomberg, a Bloomberg article, and I thought it was really, really interesting. May 30th. Mark Champion. In debates over Russia, argument often comes down to a simple proposition. Having struggled for 3 years and seen forces mauled in Ukraine, is it really plausible for Putin to think that he could take on the combined might of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization? It's time to put that question to bed. I spent a day this week with a group of generals and officers in uniform from around 20 countries. They had collected at the UK's Royal United Services Institute, at RUSI, to talk about the recreation of Army Corps as the primary organizational unit for fighting wars. These are large combined service formations we thought redundant once the Soviet Union collapsed in 91, but are now, largely thanks to Putin, back in fashion. What I walked away from was the understanding that those who would have to do any fighting aren't asking if the threat of a Russian attack on a NATO member is real, but rather where, when, and in what form it comes. Nor are they speculating over what U.S. President Donald Trump might do. The biggest concern is how to prepare. So at the start of the 22 invasion, NATO commanders were as surprised as anyone else by the ineptness of the Russian assault on Kiev, a debacle that saw the cream of Moscow's combat troops and equipment destroyed. But any complacency that followed has now gone. And, this is, we've talked about Ted Postal before. And this is, I think this was Ted Postal's point where he says, listen, Sun Tzu, the art of war. One of the things that, or maybe it was Colonel Jacques Baud, one of those two eggheads. And I think it was Baud. And he was saying, one of the things, warfare has a lot to do with deception. And it's smart to seem weaker than you are to your enemy. You want your enemy to underestimate you. And we did that for the Russians. The Russians didn't even have to propagandize us. We did it ourselves. We just smeared them and chat on them and only had the one side of the story. And now we can see where that's led to. Holy shit, what the fuck is going on? Okay. Rather than the 5-10 years as once thought, the working estimate for when Putin might have the capabilities to take on NATO once he's done in Ukraine is now multi-layered and comes from a Danish intelligence assessment earlier this year. 6 months for a localized attack, 2 years for a regional Baltic war, 5 for wider European conflict.
Sorry.
Combat.
Where do the Danes get their intelligence from? I didn't know the Danes had some great intelligence service, but anyway, I digress.
Well, obviously not, because
I guess so.
The combat force Putin has in the field is by now twice as large as when he ordered the invasion in 2022. This is an extremely important point because the Europeans, part of what the Europeans want out of this whole Ukraine war, it feels like they're even shockingly more Russophobic than Americans. Americans at least have some realist minds, it seems, in when it comes to thinking about, the Ukraine conflict. And we can see that recently with even statements by people like what's Trump's envoy to Ukraine? Kellogg, right? Even like Keith Kellogg's statements, Trump's statements, Witkoff's statements. And the Europeans, meanwhile, are not on board with this. So this is why about this right here is the background for these peace negotiations and the way that the two different sides memorandums, I think, are being perceived by the media. So yeah, sure. Russians have died, but the Russian army, the Russian armed forces, are stronger, right? They're twice as large. He continues to recruit. Production of armies and munitions has soared. Exposure to Western advanced weaponry, like HIMARS, has allowed the Russians time to figure out how to neutralize them. The absolute advantage Ukraine once held in battlefield innovation has evaporated. Russian Air Force, built to fight NATO, is modern and has been preserved intact.
Doesn't seem like this journalist's article is going the way he had intended.
100%. And I think this right here is the reason why I'm reading this article. Again and again, I heard something approaching admiration for the speed at which Russian forces have learned and adapted in Ukraine. So if you are underestimating your enemy on purpose, then yeah, I guess you'll be shocked to find out that you were underestimating them when your estimations are going, belly up. So I think this right here says a lot, because here he is, and they're saying, yeah, the Russians, they could attack and we would be screwed. And on top of that, it turns out, yeah, they actually do. It's not actually fighting stupid orcs as we like to portray. They are excellent at battlefield adaptation. And it's funny because the Russians don't talk this shit about Ukrainians. The Russians say Ukrainians are excellent soldiers, very brave fighters. But even in Russian like mainstream media, in Russian propaganda, that's still a thing that gets pointed out. But like, we made a point to underestimate our enemy, and now, I heard admiration at the speed at which. The only reason why it's admiration and why it takes you off balance is because you believed your own propaganda. Less well understood. Okay, so in terms of drone and electronic warfare, Russia is probably ahead of NATO. Not probably, they definitely are. The war has proved having small number of exquisitely capable unmanned aircraft can't compete for impact with sheer quantity and adaptability. It's crazy to think that the Russians are now ahead of everybody else in drone warfare. Less and well understood is that Russia has been improving the accuracy and survivability of its ballistic and cruise missiles. The Iskander, a rough equivalent of the ATACMS, has become difficult for even U.S.-made Patriot batteries to intercept. It's getting used to hit everything from HIMARS launchers to Ukrainian command posts. So I guess they've started shooting these Iskander rockets on a more flat trajectory, and they also dodge and weave, and it makes it hard for the Patriot to intercept a rocket that's not following a ballistic trajectory. Another Russia's ability to attack.
Go back. You just skipped a very interesting paragraph.
Oh, sorry. Most sobering for Western generals is the continued demonstration of Russia's near total indifference to casualty rates, creating a latitude for Putin and his generals that their NATO counterparts wouldn't have. Speaking of underestimating your enemies, you're doing it right here. One speaker after another at Rusi's conference spoke of the need to shift their own priorities towards force projection and the expectation of Europe's political leaders and populations towards high casualty rates. Get ready, boys.
Go back. So there's a few things about this paragraph that jumped out at me.
Okay.
First and foremost is there's this kind of stereotype that Russians don't care about, their men. And it's just like, yeah, they're these Russians, they're not human. They're orcs. It's like something out of Lord of the Rings. The hordes will just keep coming at you and they don't care if they die. Like, what a bunch of nonsense that is, number one. Number two, the reason you don't hear, at least on the Russian side, casualty rates, honestly, I don't think they're suffering that many these days. The latest estimate I heard, and believe it if you will, I've got nothing to back it up, but one of these military eggheads claimed that the current casualty rate was something like 20 to 1. And to be honest with you, I can believe that. because if you remember early in the war, even in Bakhmut, when you had the mercenary group, whatever they were called, I forget them now. Who in the hell were they? But anyway,
Wagner.
Wagner. So even when you had Wagner, doing kind of pretty risky type maneuvers in Bakhmut, like the casualties there were like 5-1. And then when the counteroffensive started, the Ukrainian counteroffensive, because the Russians were just sitting back defended, then the casualties, it was after Bakhmut that you really stopped hearing about Russian casualties, didn't you? Nobody has a clue how many Russian casualties there are now. And it's not because they're losing a lot. It's because they're not losing many. I really believe that. Now, are they losing men? Of course they are. But I think probably that 20-1 estimate is probably not far off. So that was the second point I wanted to make. And then the third point that I wanted to make is basically they're coming out and saying straight up, we need to propagandize our population because otherwise they won't give us their kids to go die for that's what they're saying.
They're not scared, guys. You gotta be prepared to lose your children.
Yeah.
So yeah, dude.
Saying. Unbelievable. That's an unbelievable paragraph right there. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, I mean, definitely interesting observations, and definitely I think people's hair should be on fire. Like, this is what they're talking about. This is what they're planning for you guys. Neither Russia's ability to attack nor its goals were subjects of dispute. Presumption was that Putin aims to reestablish Russia as a great power in Europe, and so will continue trying to subjugate former Russian colonies and break NATO. So, like, listen, here's how I think about the subject. The more you give the Russians a reason to fuck with you, the more if Ukraine wasn't being turned into a bulwark against Russia, there wouldn't be a Ukraine war right now. Young Ukrainian men would still be alive today and still have limbs today and still have normal, happy lives. Right? Ukrainians' infrastructure wouldn't have been destroyed. So, this whole thing about everybody just assumes like, yep, he's trying to do this. First of all, Russia is already a great power in Europe. Probably the greatest, right? Power in Europe, the most sovereign power in Europe of any other power. And, so if you don't want, like, it's like if the Russians didn't even want to fuck with Ukraine, and even right now in their peace deal, they're willing to let Kiev keep Odessa and stuff like this. This is definitely evidence that goes counter to this presumption that they just assert. That it's like axiomatically they take it.
And the thing about it is they presume this, but there's absolutely no evidence to support it. And in fact, quite the contrary. Like if you listen to Putin speak over the years, right? And he said this numerous times over the years. So have other Russian officials said it. Why would be like they've all been very, very consistent. And the message is something along the lines of, listen, been there, done that. We know what it's like to, lead a nation who's trying to influence other nations who hate us, basically, is what Putin has said in the past. Like, he's come out and said, listen, we know they hate us. Why would we want to try to, take them over and govern them? That's a headache we don't need, is basically what Putin has always said. And he's straight up said, we've learned from the Soviet experience, right? So there's no evidence of this at all, yet that's all they have left because they need to create a boogeyman.
And that's all this is right here. This is scaremongering. This is threat inflation, fear mongering. They're saying, be afraid, be very afraid, Russia will attack. So therefore you have to say goodbye to your pensions, right? Your awesome European living standards, because we're going to have to go to, we're going to have to invest that money in the defense industry now, in the defense sector.
But the author of the article in that sentence there, he's even saying that the likelihood of this invasion of Poland is not going to happen, right? So even the author is saying
There's
To
no
achieve
cause
that,
to
there's
invade
no
Poland.
cause to invade Poland. All you got to do is break Article 5, is what he's saying, which I
Mhm.
agree with. Article 5 isn't literally worth the paper it's written on.
See, and if these little Baltic countries, these little Baltic shards, like let's say Latvia, right, or Estonia says, well, we're really afraid that Russia might invade us. Well, then don't be a piece of shit, right? Don't be a piece of shit to your Russian population. Don't tempt them. So, like, in this right here is another important paragraph, because this really explains things for people that don't understand how this works, right? This commitment gives Europe, small nations, the confidence to defy dictates and demands from Moscow, but it's based on trust in the willingness of others to act, and therefore fragile. So yeah, basically these Chihuahua states can basically pull in Israel anytime that you push back. They're like, oh, well, my dad is stronger than your dad, kind of thing. And what interesting thing is that like a lot of these elites in these Baltic countries, um, uh, they're descended from people that were the leadership of those places when it was the Soviet Union. So it's almost as if they're trying to overcompensate with their hatred towards Moscow, because they know, like, oh, my great grandfather, or my grandfather, he was literally the Stasi, of Estonia. It was an Estonian. It wasn't the Russians. It wasn't the Russians running the Estonian KGB. It was Estonians. The Estonian Communist Party was run by Estonians. So they are those people, and they are trying to really, really extra hard hit on Russia to be like, kind of like public spectacle almost for their own people, I don't know. To undermine that trust. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. So he even says it. To undermine that trust would require only a messy attack on, say, Estonia, something Putin would have the capacity to do even now. European leaders deciding on how to respond would have to take into account some considerable risks before agreeing. So, yeah, I mean, if Estonia doesn't want to suffer that fate, why would you keep poking the bear? Stop that, right? That's the first thing. Then, yeah, this basically most of what I wanted to read here. See if there's anything else.
Ready or not.
Ready or not, U.S., British, French, German, Italian, and other forces would all have to get to the Eastern Front across the spider's web of bottlenecks, national transit license requirements, and inadequate infrastructure. NATO has a team working hard on that, but the exercise to demonstrate to Moscow that the alliance can rush forces to the east aren't scheduled until 2027.
So think about what that's saying for a second.
Yeah, we can't even.
Europe doesn't even have the roads to get you the equipment, let alone the equipment.
See, and if you thought that Russia was that kind of a threat, I don't think that you would be dealing with this threat in that way. Like, some people's hair is on fire, but that's because they're useful idiots. Like this freaking champion, Mark Champion. He's a useful idiot. Like, he believes the propaganda. It isn't all bad news. There's now strongest consensus within Europe that the issue of whether Putin should be stopped in Ukraine, or even if there are exceptions such as Orban's Hungary, money's being made available to rearm. The UK's new strategic defense review due next week is expected to allocate $1.35 billion, £1 billion, to buy drones and speed battlefield decisions. But yeah, so basically,
go back. Go to the last paragraph. You're jumping all over the place, man.
Yeah.
The clock is ticking. Europe's still moving to peace next to the US.
Yeah, exactly what we were just saying.
Both need to change. It's Putin who will decide what he does and when, and
you got to fight with what you've got in hand on the day, on current trajectories that might not be enough to deter the Kremlin for pressing on with its great power plans. So yeah, what does that tell you? That tells you, that this isn't the people that are in charge of allocating all this stuff know that this is a bunch of BS.
So basically, the author of this article is telling the truth, really. Like, there's nothing untruthful in this article.
He's telling the truth.
He's coming straight up, and he's just saying, you guys are delusional if you can think you can fight Russia, which is interesting for Bloomberg, right?
And the truth is what? The truth is that they're fucked, right? The truth is that they have nothing. That's the problem. The problem is that the truth is pretty brutal, and it actually points to we know that we're full of shit, because if you're like, oh my god, that huge wave is about to hit me, you're at least gonna flinch and there's absolutely no reaction from Europe except for this whole well, the Americans are trying to play nice with the Russians, so I guess we got to outlast Trump. That's all they have. So, but they can't, like, this article admits they can't do shit. They're not ready to do shit. Not until 2027 can they even start scheduling the exercises for logistics, as they were admitting. The Russians are ahead on, the Russians still have their Air Force. They are ahead on drones, right? They're ahead on electronic warfare. And I think that part of this Ukrainian Operation Spider's Web might have been an effort to try to hit at those, like, Russia's largely undamaged Air Force that Ukraine is largely powerless to hit. So that's kind of how I see it.
What I think we're starting to see is the fracturing of the mainstream media. So back when we had the Uniparty, which wasn't that long ago, only 6 months ago or whatever. Back when we had the Uniparty, all the mainstream media was on board, right? They were on board with the narrative. And they all reported effectively the same narrative. And yeah, there were little Democrat and Republican battles here and there, but they were largely about domestic stuff, border stuff like that. Foreign policy, Uniparty was on board. But now what you're seeing is you're starting to see, I think, the mainstream media, in a lot of ways, it's fracturing along the old party lines. So a rag like Bloomberg is historically a Republican rag, whereas the New York Times is Democrat rag, for example. So maybe I'm starting to see, and we're starting to see, a fracturing of the mainstream media, and you're starting to see the Trump White House and the Trump administration start to feed this stuff to the Bloombergs of the world to get that message out. Because I think it's pretty clear that Trump wants nothing to do with Ukraine. If you happen to watch the press conference today, Mertz came to visit the White House today.
Oh my God, I have not seen that, and I want to.
Well, go watch it, because I mean, it's fairly clear if you listen to Trump that he wants nothing to do with Ukraine. So I think that they also need to get that narrative out with the media. And the first several months of Trump's presidency, you haven't really seen, well, honestly, you've seen the mainstream media for a long time. They've just been playing the whole Biden playbook, right? But now I think, some of these, maybe Bloomberg is one, they're starting to break, and they're starting to get their information from the Trump administration, because they need that access too, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe that's what the point of this article is. And maybe if we start seeing more of these, it's because Trump is planting them. And we need to let people know that we got to get out of this mess.
So, real quick, I'm going to reload my camera again. I have no idea why my camera is glitching out today. I'm just reloading. I'll be back.
Yeah, sure. I didn't know he'd leave. Geez, what am I going to talk about? Well, I guess speaking of Trump, the other thing that was okay, you back. There he is.
Hey, what's up?
All right. Hey. All right. So what's the next topic of conversation?
Okay, so the next thing that we're going to be showing is share screen is the Senator Graham and Blumenthal press conference in Ukraine after meeting with
your brain.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like some kind of sex joke in there. So we're going to watch their press conference. We're going to try to put it on we're going to make it quicker, because I mean, it's not like especially somebody like Lindsay Graham has anything useful to say. And I'll put the subtitles on too. And we're going to try to break it down. Okay, let's go.
Thank you very much. I appreciate what you're doing. I know you were here in the 90s. So I think this is our 7th or 8th visit. We just met with President Zelensky and his team. Senator Blumenthal met with some children who've been traumatized, went to the parts of the town that were recently bombed. But I just want to give you an update of what we're doing in Washington and sort of a timeline here. This summer is going to be the summer of accountability or peace, one of the two.
it reminds me of him saying, "This is going to be the year of offense." How did that go for you?
They're supposed to be
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
he really knows what the agenda is. I think it's more of the same when it comes to the Russians. Schedule a meeting, drag it out, do one or two things to suggest you're trying to interested in doing something. But I don't believe Russia is interested in peace. As we speak, they're building up their forces along Ukraine's border for a counteroffensive in the summer or the fall.
Yeah,
So-
what do you expect them to do?
Well,
Like-
the funny thing is, I think neither
We're in a war.
party is really actually interested in peace, and you can
Right,
see that when you read their memorandums, which we'll do later.
To delay.
Well, I think Russia is interested in peace on their terms, which is fair. I think they've stipulated the terms that they're willing to end the conflict with, and I think that their terms are non-negotiable. So
Yeah, but these
you know,
latest ones are way harsher than the other ones. So it's like it's the thing where, like we were talking about this before, every time the Russians offer the Ukrainians a deal, the next one is so much worse.
right,
And this one is
because-
so much worse.
Right, because the war has escalated and Russia's taken more territory, right? And that's what it comes down to. So, like, if we want to go back to February 2022 or April 2022, yeah, they probably should have accepted that deal. And then they should have accepted the Istanbul deal. And now they should accept this deal. And the longer Ukraine drags it out because they don't want to capitulate, the more territory they're going to lose. Whereas with Russia, I mean, Russia would like to end it right now. Why wouldn't they? It's costing them money. It's costing them men. It's costing them like distraction from other things, like all sorts of reasons why they want to end the war. But they're not going to, end the war on anybody's terms but theirs. They've earned that by winning the war,
And even if the Ukrainians wanted to, here's the thing. We've talked about this before too. My theory, my opinion is the big one that the Ukrainians really don't want to do is the denazification. I think they'll even accept demilitarization, but the denazification, that's like the big one, because that is the basement dwelling, like white supremacists who had nothing else going on in their lives except for I'm genetically superior to somebody else, got propelled and became the superstars of this Maidan, post-Maidan Ukraine. And what are they going to be? Nobodies? They're going to be criminals again? They don't want that. That's the last thing that they want. They're like, they made it. They finally made it, kind of thing, So, one thing I heard Nikolai Petrov say, he said that it's not just people like Lindsey Graham who says we're willing to fight till the last Ukrainian. It's those fascists. They're willing to fight till the last Ukrainian, because the way they look at it is if every single Ukrainian dies in the cause of trying to create an independent and Russia-free Ukraine, then they are martyred for a worthy cause. Like, this is the thing about having crazy people who are bonkers in charge of your, policy.
Sure.
Prepare for another military assault to gain land by force of arms. That's what I believe is
It's
going
called
on.
war. Yes.
President Trump yearns for peace. He made it one of his priorities to end this barbaric war. You have to have partners to achieve peace. I don't believe Putin is a willing partner. I believe Ukraine has done everything that President Trump and others have asked. They've gone to every location when asked. They've done everything in their power. They've accepted a ceasefire proposal.
But they haven't capitulated, dummy. Like, that's the thing. They haven't capitulated. Like, this is the thing. Like, I understand, and maybe I just need to come out and say it so everybody's on the same page. This is what a loss looks like. Okay? NATO has
in slow motion. Yeah, in slow motion. This is what
it wasn't even that slow. It was 3 years, but NATO is lost. Ukraine is lost. This is what a loss looks like. So now you have to accept the terms of the victor, or they will continue to annihilate you even more. It really doesn't get any simpler than this. The fact that Ukraine and, Europe, they don't want to capitulate, it's going to come back to haunt them. So,
do you think Lindsey Graham is at the bargaining stage yet?
God, no. He's so irrelevant. Forget about this guy. He is so unbelievably irrelevant in this day and age.
No, I mean bargaining phase as in his like personal as his cope, whatever. What is it? The stages of grief or whatever.
When the revolution in America starts, and it will, his head will be bowled down like the mall in Washington, guaranteed. He'll be one of the first.
Yeah, dude, he was always a useful idiot and willing mouthpiece for war, always.
Yeah.
A list together of things that would be necessary from their point of view to end the war. Russia delays. They haven't produced anything in terms of their demands for peace. And
so this is interesting because what the Americans were saying here, I think it wasn't just these guys. I think it was also Jack Keane. No, not Jack Keane. Trump's special envoy on Ukraine. Freaking A. So many names in my head right now. I don't know. I'm really exhausted today, guys. I'm sorry. But his special envoy to Ukraine was saying something along these lines too. Why would the Russians provide? First of all, they're going to the meeting to exchange their documents. Why would the Russians provide these documents in advance to a different party that's not the Ukrainians? They're sitting across the negotiating table from the Ukrainians. Why are the Americans demanding to see Russia's terms before like why? I don't get this. What, you're not part of the meeting?
I don't think they're ever going to, because they don't want peace. They want more war. They assume that the West will get tired of this and we'll back off and we'll just give up. That's a big mistake. So let me tell you the state of play in Washington.
Why is that a big
82
mistake?
United States senators co-sponsoring legislation that would impose bone-breaking sanctions not only on Russia, but those countries that buy Russian oil, gas, uranium, and other products. 70% of all Russian oil is bought by China and India. So the way forward, I'm going to Paris and I'm going to Germany after this trip. I'm going to urge our European allies to lower the price cap.
This is a brand
new commercial I don't want to see. I don't want to be advertised to. Do not advertise to me.
Well,
Harder on Putin's.
Like this,
I hate being advertised.
Well, he's talking about, sanctioning China and India. Like,
yeah, that whole thing where they're going to.
Is anybody, is this guy serious at all? Does anybody seriously think that
this is what I mean? Is he in the bargaining stage where he's starting to reach and be like, here's what I'm gonna do?
He's not in any stage. He's off in his own little world because he still think he matters, but he doesn't. He's gonna lose in the midterm elections, guaranteed. Like, people, he's a dinosaur. He's so irrelevant now. Just listening to this guy makes me want to vomit. And you think about it, and he's talking about all these measures. Yes, we're gonna sanction India and China. Really? You got your president begging President Xi for a phone call, and you honestly think that you're gonna slap a 500% tariff on China? They already got you by the balls. Same thing with India. This is all silly talk from a silly man. With a silly belief that he's straight. Please continue.
Silly belief that he's straight.
Fossil fuel economy. Increase OPEC production and lower the price cap. If Europe will do that, it will matter. It will hurt Russia's war machine. While Europe goes down that road, also level
price cap never worked.
The Senate will act.
Never worked.
Going back to brief our colleagues, I'll be talking to the majority leader. And he'll be talking to the minority leader, Senator Schumer. We'll have a briefing by Ukrainians next week in the Senate, and we're going to head on this idea. Ukraine is not losing this war. That's Russia propaganda. If you look at the map a year ago and look at it today, it's virtually the same. So to those who say that Russia is winning this war,
is it now?
That is Russian propaganda. We're going to be briefing the Senate about the state of war, about the future of the minerals deal. To the American people, this business relationship we have with Ukraine in the critical mineral space is going to be a godsend to the American economy. These minerals are the lifeline. See
what I mean? This seems like bargaining. It's like, no, it's all going to work out. It's going to be great.
I don't think he's bargaining. I think he's
wishful thinking.
Wishful thinking. And Lindsay Graham is a media whore, so he hopped on an airplane just to be a media whore.
Well, I think that he loves to come to Ukraine and be the Every time he's going to go to Ukraine, he's going to do the same thing. Like he wants to get the same. Like he feels like a rock star there. He comes in
Well,
there and he says that, yeah, we're going to fuck up Russia, you know, and then they love him there.
I think it's simple. Well, they love him there, all right. From what I understand, there are a lot of Ukrainian male models of the Keir Starmer variety in Ukraine. So yeah, I'll bet you he loves going to Ukraine. But I think with Lindsey Graham, like he's just spewing nonsense because he wants to be seen and heard to make it look like he's doing something, but he's really not doing anything. I mean, this is all silly.
I
Like
think that he thinks he is. I think he thinks, because watch, you'll hear later in this thing, you'll talk about, oh, we're gonna get senators together. Vladimir Putin doesn't know who he's messing with. I'm going to open up a can of whoop ass on him, kind of thing.
What lifeblood of the 21st century AI economy, and their plans being developed now to extract these minerals for the benefit of Ukraine and the United States. So I would expect next week that the Senate will start moving the sanctions bill. There are House members that are ready to move in the House, and you'll see congressional action. President Trump said that this next 2-week period will be outcome determinative.
They're not getting mobilized yet.
About the meeting in Monday in Istanbul to give me any hope at all that Russia is interested in peace. So when this 2-week period is over, I think it'll be pretty clear to everybody Russia is playing a game at the expense of the world, not just the United States. We're going to change that game for Russia. The game Putin's been playing is about to change.
There you go.
Going to be hit and hit hard by the United States when it comes.
Okay, fair enough.
China.
Okay,
the
well,
game you're playing with Russia is about to change. If you keep buying cheap,
he's doing the Obama thumb. China, the game you're playing with Russia.
To fuel Putin's war machine, there'll be a 500% tariff on all of your products coming into the United States. So the game is about to change.
Yeah, I'll bet.
It's now time to act.
So, like I said, you had Trump and President Xi had a call today.
Yeah,
and it's like,
and it went well.
Oh, I don't think it went well at all.
Sorry, I'll tell you about the call with Putin. That was yesterday, I think.
Okay.
So,
well, the call with Xi, I think Xi basically, from what I read and interpreted, was Xi basically read him the Riot Act and said, get your shit together, and if you want to have a serious conversation, and effectively don't bother me again. And the low-level people can start dealing with something, but basically get your shit together and don't waste our time again. Is what I gathered from it. And it was Trump who wanted the call. And now you have all the auto manufacturers are screaming right now, saying that they're out of supplies. So basically, they're saying if we don't get more shit from China soon, we are just going to have to shut down our manufacturing plant because we won't have the materials. So this is a big deal for Trump, right? Like this is a big deal for Trump. Like imagine that hitting the news, right? So yeah.
I've not read this thing yet, but I'm pretty interested into. I mean, the freaking MSN is being very optimistic. They're saying, oh, they're going to be reopening. We're opening some trade stuff, but I guess I don't know. I have to read into it. I guess right now let's finish this.
Like this whole week with Trump, like he's talking out of his ass.
He's on one. What the hell is going on with him? Seriously, I think see what if this is what's going on? Trump is realizing that he's being boxed in. He can't do anything on this freaking Ukraine-Russia thing. He can't make any headway on other stuff, and on his policies that he wants to do, even domestically.
We really should have covered the Mertz Trump thing today because it was so funny. Because Trump was talking about, oh yeah, the White House. This is where World War II began and ended. And
how long is it? How long is it?
I don't know, but it was long enough. But he looks over at Mertz. He said, "This is where World War II was ended." He looks over at Mertz. That wasn't a good day for you, was it?
Oh my gosh! Oh man, I can't wait to see this. All right. Let's
like he's completely just says whatever, right?
It's different, act different. You want to be part of the international community in a positive way? Help bring this war to an end. You, above all others, could get Putin at the table if you chose to. And finally, we don't talk enough about this, but Russia has kidnapped all those 20,000 Ukrainian children as part of this war. They were taken from their families. They were made orphans because the Russians put their family members in jail or killed them.
Dude, what a fool. I think even he knows this is false. I think here he knows he's just saying stuff, because those orphaned children, what I always say is, if the Russians took the orphan children, you know what that means? That means that you left them there until the Russians came. They were in a war zone. Yeah, the Russians are basically evacuating them. If there's children that the Russians are getting their hands on, that means that those kids have already been through a war zone. So yeah, where were you and these parents of these kids when these kids were in a war zone and needed to be evacuated?
You got to understand, these American elites, senators like Graham and the people that fund them, they wouldn't understand the whole concept of taking a child out of a war zone before sexually assaulting them first, right? So you got to understand, like, for a guy like this, he doesn't understand like just humanity or anything like that. He's a sick fucker. So continue.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay. Oh shoot!
I promise that I will do everything I can until my last breath.
I promise. See, like, this is what he's doing. He's like, yeah, I am Lindsey Graham. I have come to you, the Ukrainian little people, and I promise I'm big and powerful and important and stuff, just in case you didn't know. And I'm telling you right now, me, Lindsey Graham, is on the case. You can rest at easy.
States Senate to bring these kids back. You know what terrorists do? They kidnap children. So Russia's acting like a terrorist state in so many ways. If there's not a breakthrough in returning these children back to their families in Ukraine,
that's actually what kidnappers do.
That label in shame. I have not forgotten by the state of Russia, and he should wear that label in shame.
See, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you probably know more about this than I do, but my understanding was the kids are all accounted for, the ones that are in Russia. They have a formal process to get the kids back to their pet families.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been doing that for the last 3 years.
So what Lavrov said, he literally pointed that out in that interview that we had before.
And they have a formal process whereby, you claim your child, you have to prove that you're, the legal parent or guardian.
DNA, yeah, they'll even do DNA checks and stuff.
And once you've proven that the kid should be going to you, they ship the kid off.
Yeah.
So that process has been in place for years. Does it suck that there are children in Russia when they should be with a family member somewhere in Ukraine? Of course it does. But that's the reality of a war zone.
Well, not just that. These kids are mostly orphans. So, like, sometimes they have relatives in Russia, actually. And the Ukrainians still complain about this. They're still like, no, they should go to relatives here in Ukraine. They're going to have a demographic problem. Kids are easily brainwashed. This is the people that they have to try to rebuild whatever's left of Ukraine from, And meanwhile, they're over there getting brainwashed by the Russians. No. They got to come over here and get brainwashed by us.
Sure. But the whole argument about, they've kidnapped the children and all this, like, it's so silly.
It is completely bonkers, and the fact that they keep repeating that, it just shows that this is another just media talking point that they just assert until they just repeat it. People that don't know anything about the Ukraine war know about the kidnapped children. Nobody cares about where's Senator Graham going out there and talking about how Israel is a terrorist state, killing children, starving children? Nowhere, right? So,
but the thing about the children thing, it never stuck. Like, it never took. Like, nobody ever believed the 20,000 children or whatever the number. Nobody ever believed that story. Even your most brain dead, normal, Westerner, because it doesn't make sense. And you would logically think, like, unless you're really, really like just room temperature IQ stupid, you would think logically, okay, that doesn't make sense because a nation state doesn't go around kidnapping children. Like, there's got to be something more to the story, right? And that's why this whole argument never got widespread traction, I'll say. Bucha got traction. This never got traction. because it just doesn't make sense. Never did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bucha definitely got a lot more, and then they shut it down.
Yeah.
But
Children. Senator Blumenthal.
okay, here we go. Crazy number 2.
My thanks to all the team in the United States Embassy. We've been here 7 or more times over the last 3 years, and except for one of those trips when the embassy was closed.
That's called 7 or more times in the last how many years did he say? We've been here 7 or more times.
Over the last 3 years.
3 years. So this sounds to me like for the last 3 years, why are high-level American politicians going to Ukraine if this is supposed to be an independent country trying to fight for its sovereignty? Like Brian Berletic always says, if Ukraine wants to regain its sovereignty, it has to take it back from the people that actually stole their sovereignty. It was not the Russians. It's these guys.
And except for one of those trips when the embassy was closed, we have been in huge admiration of the courage and conviction of our foreign service, our troops, our diplomats who are here on the ground. Let me begin where Senator Graham ended. I met this morning with some of those children.
Wait.
And brought back.
Oh, how are they brought back?
And my heart was in my throat. The trauma and tragedy of those children whose lives will be changed forever.
This incredible.
Yeah, their lives will be changed
they
forever
will.
because they've been through a war zone. But that would be a horrifying experience for anybody.
But like I said, nobody ever bought this story because it just didn't make sense.
Well, even here,
none of
they're contradicting it. Let me just pick up where Senator Graham left off by contradicting exactly what he said. Yes, I met these children, actually, these kidnapped children that the terrorist Russians are, taking. How did you meet these children? You're in Ukraine. It's because those children were returned, because we already know, as Lavrov has pointed out. But anyway, I'm going to repeat myself. We're never going to finish.
Terrorism is on Vladimir Putin's hands. And if anybody deserves to be called a terrorist today, it is Vladimir Putin. And Russia deserves to be called a terrorist state unless those children are brought home. 20,000.
You think this is foreshadowing? Because this is like right before the terrorist attacks that Ukraine did in Russia. So it's like, Russia terrorist, Russia terrorist, Russia terrorist, right before Ukraine does some terrorist shit.
Honestly, man, I think it's no more than they've got nothing left in the tank but tropes. And,
I think when they were here, they were shown that there was going to be this operation coming up. I think they were probably, this is Lindsay Graham. He feeds them copium. Like they're going to, I think that they probably gave him some info, probably.
Like I said, I think it's just a bunch of tropes, man. Like it really is. Like the whole Western narrative has always just been fluffy tropes. Really.
What does Gable say? You have to accuse the other side that of which you are guilty. So this is what they're doing, I think. I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe they're just going out there and they're doing their shtick.
Re-education.
Well, what else are they gonna do? Like they're out of weapons. Like I'm convinced that America is out of weapons. I know Europe's out of weapons.
These guys are still huffing the copium, and they probably thought that this Operation Spider's Web probably would have done more damage. Probably the Ukrainians took them aside and they're like, oh, we're about to fuck them up.
These are just circus barkers, right? These are salesmen. But
especially these two.
Behind the scenes, they know what's what, right? And all we're seeing right now is a bunch of people puffing out their chests like peacocks, and they're trying to say we're big bad. Like I always use the bad Leroy Brown analogy. Bad Leroy Brown, baddest man in the whole damn town, badder than old King Kong, meaner than a junkyard dog. That is what America has been saying about itself for the last 80 years. And, listen to the song. You'll see what happens to Leroy Brown.
Okay. I do not know the song. I will check it out. But yeah, it kind of reminds me of how
brother
Roosevelt's speak softly, carry a big stick.
if you've never heard that song, you probably have never heard anything by Jim Croce. And if you've never heard anything by Jim Croce, you need to leave and go listen to some Jim Croce. He is phenomenal.
All right,
Phenomenal, folks.
I always love being shown new music. I will absolutely listen to Jim Croce, but I might have to ask you to type that into the chat so
Sure.
that I can actually remember. But okay, what was I going to say? Okay, so basically he's going to continue on this whole thing, right? This is what the Ukrainians are really paranoid about, is that they're teaching the Russians are teaching these Russian-Ukrainian children, Russian version of history. Oh no.
In Russian hands, going through re-education, that is a word that denotes terrorism at its worst, imposed on children. I also visited a place in Kyiv.
Well, yeah.
Koshno, a neighborhood.
After you've been miseducated by Ukrainian propaganda.
Decimated now. It's a shell of what it was. But
okay, blah, blah, blah.
Drones that were targeted at that site. They weren't there by accident. Vladimir Putin is killing, injuring, and maiming innocent civilians.
Oh, no.
Only terrorists do that kind of atrocity, and he has rightly been called a war criminal. So the question is, what do we do about it? It is crunch time for Vladimir Putin. He has to show up and put up, or the entire fury of the world should be directed against him. Clearly, he has the opportunity.
Or what?
Or continue this war.
Uh-huh.
If Vladimir Putin stops his brazen, brutal attack, the war ends.
Uh-huh.
If Ukraine stops, Ukraine ends. The burden is on Vladimir Putin. And right now, let's be very blunt, he's playing the United States for a stooge. Americans don't like to be made fools of, but that's what he's doing. Clearly, obviously, prolonging and playing for time, stonewalling and stalling and stringing out the President of the United States. Americans won't stand for it. So his promise about something new in 2 weeks.
Who are you to tell people what the Americans are going to stand for? Shut up.
There'll be some kind of meetings in the future. All of this gobbledygook is clearly just a play for time so that he can go to the battlefield in his offensive. And the response of the United States Senate will be clear and unequivocal. 500% tariffs on anybody who buys his oil or gas or petrochemicals. 500% tariff on India, on China, which buys 70% of those Russian products, and anybody else who buys them. And I have been tremendously heartened by the support we've received from our European allies. They are heroes because they have said, go for it.
Yeah, because they're the ones that are the craziest.
Even though they continue to import some fraction of their total, maybe 10, 14%. And as Senator Graham said, we'll be discussing with those allies. We're headed to Paris from here to talk to the top leadership there. But it has to be a unified approach. And I will just say this finally. For anybody who says, will that sanctions bill pass? There are very few legislative measures in the United States Congress. You can count them on one hand. And that's with a couple of fingers missing. They get 82 co-sponsors, evenly divided on both sides of the aisle.
Jeez, I was talking on mute. Can you pause for a sec?
Oh, yeah.
You notice I've noticed this language from the American side in the last several months, and it even predated Trump. They don't talk about military anymore. Like if this was 10 years ago, these guys would be threatening military action, right? The U.S. doesn't threaten military action anymore. Not against, well, even the Houthis, like they barely threaten action against the Houthis. They're not
and still walked away.
Yeah, and still got their ass kicked. But I've noticed this. They no longer talk about threatening Russia. They don't talk about going to war because I think they know they can't. But what they don't realize, or maybe they do, maybe they don't realize that the economic sanctions won't work either. So basically, you've got these two knuckleheads are getting up threatening stuff that everybody in the world knows just won't happen or work. So it's all theater. Everything that we're seeing here is theater.
Like, have you ever lost something and then you're in a hurry, you're trying to freaking find this thing? You check somewhere, you check the same place again, you check the same place again. Like, it's kind of like that kind of level of desperation and almost maybe slight panic. Mm-hmm. I think that kind of leads to this kind of thing where they're basically stepping into the same kind of cope, right? It's
Yeah.
all going to be fine. 82 sponsors, evenly divided.
Anybody who says
Like it's
or questions whether the United States is behind Ukraine,
like hype.
think of 82 senators who disagree on a lot of other things, maybe some of them almost on everything else, coming together and standing behind Ukraine. So to the people of Ukraine, let me just say, we are behind you. We're going to stand with you because your cause.
Well, it's because you're the uniparty. That's all.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's
Wait,
be honest.
who asked the American people? The American people have a clear preference. Bring the troops home, bring the money home, do something about the borders, right? Like Donald Trump went on a mandate of end the war in Ukraine. The American people are actually very clear about what they want. What you're saying is, I am America. American people are just like an obstacle course that I have to deal with in order for me to get reelected.
And the funny thing is, the Europeans are the same. Like, Europeans know, the Europeans don't want to fight this. The Europeans don't. Average European has absolutely no quarrel with the Russians or anybody else, right? So eventually something has to break. And I think it'll happen in Europe. I think people are just going to get sick and tired of their governments not listening to them and their governments pissing away all their money.
We're already seeing it. I agree with you. I think we're already
And
seeing it.
like I said, you're just going to see a lot of unrest, like big time unrest. It's going to start in Europe and it'll come here for sure.
This is the pink.
Wow, those are too big for you.
Yeah, and it looks like you can like fit 2 or 3 of you into those pants.
Charade. A meaningless meeting. You know, President Trump said that Ukraine doesn't have good cards. Well, Russia's much bigger and has a lot more people. I get that. But the world has a lot of cards against Russia. One of those cards that we have is about to be played in the United States Senate.
But who's the world? Tell me, Lindsay, who is the world in your view?
He's just saying shit to the Ukrainians. He's just trying to be a rock star. This is nobody loves Lindsay Graham like the Ukrainians do. Everybody despises this piece of crap. Finally, he goes, I'm amongst my people where they love me.
We have 3 branches of government.
We have 3 branches of government.
Senate are poised to act. What would change our mind if Russia came to the table, agreed to a ceasefire, and earnestly sought peace? There'd be no reason to
Why would the Russians agree to a ceasefire if the Russians are winning?
proceed. Assuming that doesn't happen,
Nobody ever explains that, right? It's like
Ukraine will brief the Senate and the House about the status of the war and about how the sanctions could affect Putin's war machine.
Ukraine will brief them on this?
I've never been more optimistic than I am today, and let me tell you why. It's becoming clear to anyone. Ukraine
It's becoming clear. Zelensky shared some of his stash with me, and now my optimism is soaring.
is ready for peace, is willing to make sacrifices and compromise for peace, is willing to stop the fighting to achieve peace. It's clear to almost anyone, Putin is not remotely interested in anything that would lead to peace. So there's a card game going on this
no,
summer.
Lindsay,
The
he
first cards
is.
are going to be played by
Yeah,
You need
literally
to accept capitulation
exactly.
terms. That's what you need to do.
Yes, you made the bed. You have to sleep in it. You guys did this to Ukraine. Yeah, you have to tell them. You don't get to come to Ukraine now and say, no, we're going to bail you out and everything's going to be fine after all. You have to come to Ukraine and say, I'm sorry, guys. I don't know, maybe because you guys don't speak English or something, but actually I'm a real idiot. I'm a complete idiot. In my home country, I'm notorious for being a dunce. Even people that vote for me look down on me as a intellectually deficient. So please don't take it. Please don't be offended and don't take this the wrong way. But when I was saying that stuff, I was just being a typical idiot that I am, and I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe if you spoke English, you would be able to understand that. You'd be able to see that. But unfortunately for you. But no, he's not saying that. He's saying, I'm more optimistic than I've ever been. All right. Hopefully.
But I mean, let's say you're a Lindsey Graham voter, right? And you're a constituent of his.
Mhm.
And you're listening to this silly gay hillbilly over in some foreign country talking about, spending more money and blah, blah, it's just supporting this racket that's over there for a country you don't care about. What would you think of this clown? And the truth, right? Everybody knows the truth now. Everybody knows the truth that Russia is winning. The cat's out of the bag. Trump has come out and said it. Vance has come. Like, everybody's telling the truth. Yet, even though they're saying Russia's winning, they're also saying Russia's winning, but Ukraine still has optimism. You know, the old spunk. You know, I don't get why anybody would vote for Lindsey Graham after listening to this, because he's clearly either lying or delusional. And you know, for me, when I hear this stuff, like, you just can't take a person like this seriously, because, like I said, this is not 2022 anymore. Like, people have got a
And
lot
it's not
more.
1991 anymore either.
Sure, but even 2022, like, you could make the argument back in 2022 that Ukraine was still in the fight. They haven't been in the fight for a long, long time, and everybody sees and knows that now. So when you have Graham and this other clown, whatever his name is, talking about,
Blumenthal.
you know, they're going to win, I just, what logical person with just a basic brain set would listen to what they're saying? I don't get it. Like, we all
Well,
know that they're full of it.
So I guess I'm not going to switch the things. But here, just listen to this part, and then I'm going to read out to you literally an answer to his question.
We have to give them more radar. We have to give them more Patriots. We have to give them more artillery. We have to give them more planes.
Okay, this is what he's saying. Now, let's take a look at what Marco Rubio recently said. Marco Rubio recently stated, quote, "In fact, to the extent that Ukraine has asked for anything additional, what they have asked for was air defenses, Patriot units, which, frankly, we don't have. But we are working closely with our NATO allies. There are NATO allies that do have some batteries of Patriot missiles that they could provide or transfer over to the Ukrainians to defend, for example, the airspace of Kiev and other places," Rubio said, end quote, Rubio said. So, yeah, send them what? Excuse me.
Because they need that kind of military support, not just rhetoric.
Because they need a lot more than that kind of military support, man.
We're not waiting to
Well,
find out.
you hear what he said? They need that kind of military support.
And we can't provide it.
No, what he said was they need more military support, not just rhetoric. And I'm thinking of, like, the rhetoric you just said. Yeah, like,
Yeah. With the
It's
brownie
so
points you're trying to win right now.
Moving ahead.
well, he knows all this. Like, he knows what's what. You can't tell me he doesn't.
I don't know. I look
So-
at this and it looks almost like, you remember how Lindsey Graham used to hang on McCain's coattails? You know, it was like McCain's retarded assistant almost, you know. It almost feels like this similar situation. Maybe Lindsey Graham as a sidekick now in Blumenthal.
And I am very, very hopeful.
I would love it if that was the case.
Will send a message to Putin that he has to put up and show up. But I don't know whether he will take that message, because here's the other thing I think of.
Because there's nothing that we could do.
I think he underestimates the United States of America. I think
Does he?
He thinks we're weak and indecisive.
I don't think he's ever said that. I think Vladimir Putin said, hey, Russia can't win in a straight up fight against a U.S. and NATO. So I don't think that the Russians are underestimating their potential adversaries in the way that we did.
Well, let's say, for argument's sake,
In other
Okay.
news, a 2000
let's say that Putin did underestimate America, right? And Putin does think they're weak and blah, 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 all that other stuff. Let's assume that that was all true. It doesn't change anything. I'll ask the question again. Even if that's true, what are you going to do about it? Right?
Mhm.
Like, so he's about to set himself up because he's like, well, Putin thinks we're weak and blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's see what he has to say.
Okay.
Go
Oh,
back.
shoot.
What do you, dude?
He doesn't understand what 82 senators coming together from both
You go
sides
back?
mean in terms of.
More? Okay.
Here's the other thing I think about Putin. I think he really
I'll go more.
message to Putin that he has to put up and show up.
Oh, man. I'm sure Putin, he's hearing this and he's like, oh, man, how am I going to handle this?
Yeah.
But I don't know whether he will take that message.
82
Here's the
senators.
thing I think about Putin. I think he underestimates the United States of America.
Imagine these two fine specimens of physical fitness, as well as 80 more just like them. So Putin's, I'm sure he's quaking.
I think he thinks we're weak and indecisive and that we'll never get our act together. He doesn't understand what 82 senators coming together from both sides of the aisle mean in terms of practical import. And these sanctions will cripple his economy. They will be bone crushing to a nation.
Sees, this is what I mean. It's like he's picking up the same thing, looking for the keys in the same place again. These sanctions are gonna work. The sanctions didn't work. No, these sanctions have to work. They have to be here. The keys have to be here. You've searched there 5 freaking times. At this point in time, maybe slow down and like really search or go look somewhere else, right? It's this right here where they're saying there's nothing else that we have. They're like, we're threatening Vladimir Putin with what? We can't send. He's like, we should be sending more weapons and more arms and stuff, but they're not, right? And they can't. And then he says, what? Back to the only option they have, bone crushing sanctions, which was plan A in the first place, and plan A failed. And they're like, it has to work.
I go back to you're begging China to drop the existing tariffs of 30%, and you're gonna turn around and throw 500% on that. Like, of course you're not. And Trump said that today in the press conference with Mertz, because Lindsey Graham and this whole bill came up. And if you watch it and listen to what Trump doesn't say, it's pretty clear that he doesn't support it. And actually, it's up to the president to like the Congress can pass this bill. It's up to the president to enforce it. And if you listen to what Trump said when he was asked about it today, he's not enforcing it. Like, this is all a nothing burger.
Yeah.
That is basically, as one of our colleagues once said, a gas station with nuclear arms.
See, it's like they're rehashing it. Like
he has one resource, and we are going to throttle that resource as a means of revenue raising.
Again, same old tropes, right?
The only thing that they're if they could have done this in a different way, they wouldn't be here again. The sanctions didn't work in the first place. For you to say the sanctions have to work, and this isn't the first time they've doubled down and said, no, the sanctions, how are this not working? This was the secret weapon. This was the wonder weapon that was supposed to win the war. And they're basically saying, okay, well, the keys have to be somewhere. They can't be completely gone. They can't be missing. But like, this is what I'm saying. Like, I don't know. I think they're somewhere along on that stage of grief. And I think they're in bargaining stage. All right, I think this is basically it. Let's see.
I think as the Senate begins to move.
Oh, all right. Let's hear this. He kills children.
President Trump's very frustrated with Putin. He talks in vague terms about peace, and he kills children during the night. I think as the
what do you do with children during the night? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, right. What does Israel do with the children during the night? They kill them during the night. Oh, and during the day.
He's reached a point now where he is looking for concrete action by Russia, and unfortunately, nothing has happened. He talked to Putin a week or two ago. They were supposed to present a memorandum of what it would take for a ceasefire. Nothing's happened.
They weren't supposed to present anybody with that memorandum except for the Ukrainian side.
Feels like he is.
All right. So anyway, it's a shame that we are terrible at watching videos in any timely manner. Let me get out of here. Let me go to the article then. The full text of the peace memorandum, right? So this was I think this is provides, I guess, some of the background. Here they are. They're coping hard. They're upset that the Russians aren't showing them the memorandum ahead of time, which is, I think that's nuts. How could you possibly treat that as a given? Like, I have no idea. Okay, so where is it? This is the article. No, there it is.
Well, think of any negotiation, like a union, battle, collective agreements, whatever that stuff. So what are they suggesting? Yeah, like, what are they suggesting that, before the union goes into bargaining, that they publish their proposal with the New York Times? Like, what would that achieve? You know what I mean?
I don't understand. I think maybe they were trying to get ahead of the spin game early or something. But okay, here we go. Full text of Russian and Ukrainian memorandums. They're quite short. Okay. Among the main points, Moscow's memorandum calls on Kiev to withdraw its troops from the former Ukrainian territories that have joined Russia and confirm its neutral and non-nuclear status, of course. Okay, Section 1. International legal recognition of the incorporation into the Russian Federation, Crimea, LPR, DPR, Zaporozhye, Kherson regions, full withdrawal from these territories of armed forces of Ukraine and other Ukrainian paramilitary forces. So this is one of the demands that's getting treated as a maximalist demand. But I think that it's just dealing with realities on the ground. Like, okay, the Russians incorporated those territories. They're going to take them eventually. If you want to have a peace deal to save lives and stuff like that, then yeah, let's do it without the fight. Otherwise, you're going to have the fight. 2, neutrality of Ukraine, implying its refusal to join military alliances and coalitions, as well as a ban on any military activity by third-party states on Ukrainian territory and the deployment of foreign armed formations, military bases, and military infrastructure there. So this is, I think, is really important because the Russians are saying, no, Ukraine needs to be neutral. They're not saying Ukraine needs to be in our sphere of influence. They're allowing Ukraine to be independent. They're just saying that you don't get to be in anybody's, nobody's, neither side's nukes should be pointed at the other side on your territory.
It's basically the Austrian model, right?
Austrian model, I guess, yeah. Somewhat. Okay. Termination of all existing international treaties and agreements inconsistent with the provisions of paragraph 2 of the section and refusal to conclude such agreements in the future. So, all the secret 100-year deals with the UK that the Ukrainians did for those rare earths and stuff. The Russians say all of that's null and void, goes without saying. 4, confirmation of Ukraine's status as a state without nuclear or other weapons of mass destruction, with a direct ban on their receipt, transit, and deployment on Ukrainian territory. So kind of already hit upon that. Establishment of maximum limits on the size of the AFU and other Ukrainian military formations. So far, this is all demilitarization and liberation of the territories that were annexed by Russia, which has been Russia's position from the start, right?
Sure.
Demilitarization, denazification, respect for Russian speakers and culture. Okay. Establishment of maximum limits for the AFU, demilitarization stuff. And there are permissible specifications, dissolution of the Ukrainian nationalist formations within the AFU and National Guard. So that's already a little bit of the denazification there. 6, guarantees of the full rights, freedoms, and interests of the Russian and Russian-speaking populations, granting the Russian language official status. A lot of these are just straight up rehashing what the Russians have always said. Legislative prohibition of the glorification and propaganda of Nazism and neo-Nazism, dissolution of nationalist organizations and parties. That denazification, which I think is the biggest lightning rod. 8, lifting of all current economic sanctions, bans, and restrictive measures between the Russian Federation and Ukraine, and refusal to impose new ones. 9, resolution of issues related to family reunification and displaced persons. 10, waiver of mutual claims for damages incurred during hostilities. So basically, the Russians are not going to be paying you guys for any reparations. 11, removal of restrictions imposed on the Orthodox Church of Ukraine. So that's the canonical Orthodox Church. Gradual restoration of diplomatic and economic relations, including gas transit, transport, and other connections, including with third-party states. Section 2, ceasefire conditions. Option 1, they have 2 options for their Ukraine's much desired ceasefire. 1, commencement of complete withdrawal of the AFU and other Ukrainian paramilitary formations from the territory of the Russian Federation, including DPR, LPR, Zaporozhye, Kherson, their pullback from the borders of the Russian Federation to a distance agreed upon by the parties in accordance with provisions to be approved. Option 2, the package proposal. 1, prohibition on redeployment of the AFU and other Ukrainian paramilitary formations except for movements aimed at withdrawal from the borders of the Russian Federation to a distance agreed upon by the parties. 2, cessation of mobilization and commencement of demobilization. So the Russians are saying, yes, demobilization needs to commence in order for them to consider the ceasefire. The Ukrainians want the ceasefire. The Russians are saying, all right, let's do it. Demobilization is part of the deal. 4, elimination of military presence of third countries in Ukrainian territory, cessation of participation of foreign specialists in military operations on Ukraine's side, guarantees of Ukraine's reunification, renunciation of sabotage and subversive activities against the Russian Federation and its citizens. I wonder if they put this one in right before or right after the terrorist attack. Establishment of a bilateral center for monitoring and control of the ceasefire regime. See, this is really interesting. A bilateral center for monitoring and control of the ceasefire regime. The Russians are saying, no, we'll take 50-50. We'll take 50-50 for what's left. This is still good terms. Like you were saying, if Ukraine is smart, they will take this deal because this is still some very, very good terms that they frankly probably don't deserve. 7, mutual amnesty for political prisoners and release of detained civilians, lifting of martial law in Ukraine, announcement of the date for elections of the president of Ukraine and the Verkhovna Rada, which must take place no later than 100 days after the lifting of martial law, signing of an agreement on the implementation of provisions. Contains section 1. Okay, then section 3. Work commences on drafting the treaty text. So this is the sequence and timeline for implementation, which is particularly important to have nowadays because if you remember with the Minsk Accords, the reason why the Ukrainians constantly made these excuses about why they don't have to follow the Minsk Accords is because they were saying, oh, we get to determine the order in which these points are carried out. So here the Russians are saying, here are the steps, the order in which these events will be carried out. None of that BS. Work commences on drafting the treaty text. 2-3 day ceasefire declared for the collection of bodies and those fallen in the gray zone. 6,000 bodies of AFU servicemen are unilaterally transferred to the AFU. So the Russians are just giving that to them. And I think that this is more of the reason why they freaking hate that Vladimir Medinsky guy, because he's basically playing expert propaganda game against the Ukrainians. You think they want to bring back 6,000 corpses, and they're doing this unilaterally. It's like maybe the Ukrainians don't even have 6,000 corpses to exchange for the corpses that the Russians have of the Ukrainians. So they're just doing that. Ceasefire memorandums. And then honestly, there was, I wonder if they tell you any notes. Another one of the things, which I'm not reading it here, but another one of the things that they ended up agreeing on in this deal was transferring a bunch of prisoners, each other's prisoners. And they, the way that the Russians did is they're like, the Ukrainians wanted the 18 to 24-year-olds or 18 to 27-year-olds released back to them. And so the Russians are like, oh, okay, you guys want your soldiers back that you're going to put back into the front line and they're going to fight us. Okay. All right. No problem. But you are taking all of your wounded as well. We're sending you a shit ton of wounded. So it's like they're weighing the system down, and what Ukraine needs can't say no. What are they going to do? Is Zelensky's going to say no, thank you, we don't want our soldiers back, you can keep them. So I think that they really Russians did some cheeky blicky diplomacy here. Elections are conducted, government bodies are transformed. Okay, wait. Ceasefire memorandum signed with specific dates for fulfillment of all provisions, determining the dates for the signing of future treaty on final settlement here and after the treaty. 30-day ceasefire regime takes effect from the moment the AFU withdrawal begins. So you want your 30-day ceasefire? Okay. And it starts to take effect the moment that you withdraw. Complete the withdrawal of AFU units from the territory of Russian Federation, and full implementation of the package agreement must be completed within these 30 days. So you want 30-day ceasefire? We can have a 30-day ceasefire. That's how it's going to go. 6, elections are conducted. Government bodies are formed on the territory of Ukraine. Treaty is signed, because for the Russians, they don't think the current government is legitimate, right? So they're like, before we do this, you guys are going to vote new people in. Those new guys are going to sign the shit, because we don't take what Zelensky says as legitimate. The signed treaty is endorsed by legally binding UN Security Council resolution. The treaty is ratified, enforced, and implemented. Ukrainian memorandum. 1. Key principles of the agreement of negotiation process. Full and unconditional ceasefire in the sky, on land, and at sea as necessary background and prerequisite for peace negotiations. Oh, what a relief. It looks like you guys are on the same page. All the Ukrainians now have to do is agree to these terms, right? No. And this is to me, I was listening to Chaz Freeman, and he was saying, this reeks of the British. This is what happened is the British are trying to trying to get all of these events to line up right before these negotiations, right, with the attacks on the airports, right, on the airplanes, attacks on the bridge, attacks on the train stuff. And then on top of that, the Ukrainians keep coming back, and what do they keep demanding? They keep demanding an unconditional ceasefire. So it's like they're almost trying to play hardball with Russia, and like they're trying to put the screws in on them. And he said like, this is like a really super British way to look at it and to approach things. Addressing humanitarian issues, unconditionally return all deported and illegally displaced Ukrainian children, exchange of all prisoners, the all for all principle, release by Russia of all civilian hostages. So who do you think has more prisoners? It's going to be the Russians. The Russians are going to have the greater majority of prisoners. So like, yeah, oh, how convenient. We want to exchange all prisoners for all prisoners is this who's winning the war? Like, the Russians are basically giving you the terms of surrender this time around, right? Like, what are you doing? Non-repetition of aggression. The aim of the negotiations is to restore a permanent basis for lasting peace and security, and to ensure that aggression does not occur again. Security guarantees and engagement of the international community. Ukraine must receive robust security guarantees. The parties will invite the international community to participate in the negotiations and provide guarantees to ensure the implementation of the agreements. See, that's like freaking, that's the British being like, no, we have to have our say in there. Basically, I don't know if that's true or not, but
I think so.
It was an interesting analysis where it's like, yeah, no, definitely you have to put it in to there that we can be part of the thing, you know. Sovereignty. Ukraine is not forced to be neutral. It can choose to be a part of the Euro-Atlantic community and move towards EU membership. Ukraine's membership in NATO depends on consensus within the alliance. No restrictions may be imposed on the number, deployment, or other parameters of the armed forces of Ukraine, as well as the deployment of troops of friendly foreign states on the territory of Ukraine. Well, I mean, that's an impasse there, right? Like, I don't know how they're going to compromise on that. That's like, those are two completely diametrically opposing views or demands. Territorial issues. Territorial gains made by Russia since February 2014 are not recognized by the international community. The contact line is the starting point for negotiations. Territory issues are discussed only after a full and unconditional ceasefire. Sanctions. Some sanctions may be lifted from Russia, but in stages and only gradually, with a mechanism for resuming sanctions if necessary. Snapback. Frozen Russian sovereign assets are used for reconstruction or remain frozen until reparations are paid. So the Russians basically, that's another thing, Russians basically said, no reparations. Implementation. Agree on a clear, balanced, and achievable roadmap for implementation and enforcement of the agreements. To next step, agreeing ceasefire and agenda of the leaders' meeting. After the meeting in Istanbul, the parties continue the talks, which shall focus on 1, full and unconditional ceasefire, its modalities, and monitoring. They're back to that ceasefire thing. 2, confidence-building measures. 3, preparation, agreeing agenda and structure of future leaders' negotiations on key topics. Negotiations to be held with the U.S. and Europe participating. Like, what is this? They're rehashing this point again. Ceasefire, full and unconditional ceasefire in the sky, on land, and at sea, at least 30 days.
The Brits are like, don't forget us.
Yeah, exactly. I like that. I like that version of the story. I hope that's exactly how it's panned out. Anyway, ceasefire monitoring led by the U.S. and supported by third countries. Confidence building measures is another thing. The Russians were saying no. It's going to be bilateral, like they're going to be part of it. After successful exchange of POWs, after Istanbul talks, but the parties continue the exchange process for all prisoner of war in the all for all principle, agreement on unconditional return by the Russian Federation of all deported and displaced Ukrainian children, released by Russia of all civilian prisoners. These measures should include all categories of persons listed, starting from February 2014. And then, of course, they want to have a leaders meeting. The leaders of Ukraine and Russia meet to agree on key aspects of final peace settlement. Key topics of peace agreement to be agreed by the leaders are permanent and complete cessation of hostilities, conditions, monitoring, sanctions for violations. So, like, security guarantees and non-repetition of aggression, territorial issues, economy compensation, reconstruction, penalties for breach of agreements, conclusion of a final peace agreement. So, yeah, as you can see, with that in the background, I think maybe we didn't have the Russian memorandum, right? Notoriously, as we heard, brought up multiple times, right, by Graham and Blumenthal. So we didn't have the Russian memorandum. We were demanding that Russian memorandum. I think that we probably knew there would be some terror attack, and we were going to, the Russians probably actually modified the memorandum, I'd say, to add this, we're going to renounce that we're going to do any terrorist actions on each other's territory, right? So I think that they thought that they would be in a stronger position. They thought that maybe the Russian Air Force would have had, because it was like over 100 drones were launched, right? And so they maybe were hoping to get 100 airplanes to really, really take a chunk out of Russia's, not even strategic, just their aviation in general. And it didn't work out like that. And imagine if they had come to the table with that. If they had come to the table with, here we just blew up the Crimean Bridge. Crimean Bridge is no longer. Here we just blew up 100 Russian jets. 100 Russian jets are gone, which they were saying 40, and now they're saying it's 13. And some people are saying, oh, and some of the ones that they hit were inoperable. So no matter how successful that operation is, and it was shockingly fantastic operation, they did not, I don't think, achieve the results that they were hoping for coming into this summit, coming into this into these negotiations. And their terms, they always say the Russian terms are maximalist. Okay, I guess you could say that Russians have some maximalist terms that are difficult for the Ukrainians to swallow, but that's why the Russians are in a negotiating position with the leverage. They get to do this. So you don't get a right to bitch and complain about that. Like, are you indignant that you decided to have a war, and then when you lost the war, they told you that you have to sign a piece of paper that was uncomfortable? Okay.
Are they indignant, or are they petulant, or are they both? Like, it just seems to me these are children.
They're spiteful. They're spiteful is what it is. They're like, no, not to the Russians. Anything but the Russians. Kind of like reminds me of I was reading a long time ago some like memoirs of some like German letters that they were sending in World War II. One of the letters I was reading is like, here we were taught that the Russians are subhumans, and we were expecting subhumans, and anybody that said that, like, I want to kill them right now, because here I am freezing my ass off in a trench, getting bombed by quote unquote subhumans. It turns out that underestimating your enemy is not a smart thing to do. But okay, anyway, let's do our two scoops.
Well, I think ultimately, though, that whole Ukrainian memo, like I don't really think that it had much to do with the attack on the airbase, because honestly, the memo hasn't changed in 3 years. Like, they're still saying the same stuff they were saying 3 years ago, and they haven't budged. So it looks to me like the war will continue and Russia will budge them. So
yeah, and so when Blumenthal and Graham say that the Russians don't want to end the war, I don't think they're necessarily wrong. The Russians don't want to end the war on those terms that the Ukrainians are offering them. Right. And the Ukrainians, the thing that they're not saying, also don't want to end the war. Because if the war ends right now as it is, it's going to end on these kinds of terms. The Ukrainians aren't going to be in a position to do jack shit, right? So I think both of them are trying to keep the war fighting, more or less, the leadership. But okay, let's try to do the two scoops, because we got about 3 minutes before we're technically on time.
All right, it's
a shame we didn't watch. We should have watched the Mertz thing. That would have been probably more entertaining than those two knuckleheads.
This is last week in Toronto, Canada. What these people are doing, your guess is as good as mine.
Summoning something. No dancing on a dead planet. What are they trying to look like, freaking Sith from like?
I couldn't tell you what this show is all about. I don't know what the red is about. I guess it's got like a handmaiden's tail type feel to it for some bizarre reason, which has nothing to do with the climate, or maybe it does a little bit.
Maybe they think they're artists. Maybe they're like, we are performance artists, protesters. We are artistic protesters. Our protests are high-end and snooty, high-scale protests. We do high-end art, and I mean,
I think that this just
these are probably the same people that probably show their tits and that freaking save the planet and stop using gas, for attention. This is like another version of that. I feel like. What else is this? You just can't. You just can't get away with it as much. Can you play it again? I want to watch it again.
Sure.
He's crazy.
I think this is just Canada now. This is just what. Oh, sorry, I didn't have the volume on. There you go.
No, you did not. I still can't hear it. Oh, here we go. How long do you think they manage to keep their arms up till they get tired? You can't do that for 5 minutes.
None of them look in shape. So,
see, this is why they're not the protesters that show the boobs. This is why they're not those ones, because they're not in shape. If they were in shape, they'd be doing the same thing the more typical way. I don't know, man. Like, you must believe it. You must be really into it and really thinking that. I don't think these are feds. I think these are just really confused old people that have anything better in their lives. You know,
I
they
don't
really
know.
believe it.
Okay, well, more power to them, I guess. I guess if you're gonna protest,
It's better. This is
there
better
could be
than.
worse. Yeah,
Yeah,
there could be
exactly.
worse things to protest about.
This is just
But
crazy. It's just wild,
yeah,
which is why it belongs in 2 scoops of crazy. But it's
yeah,
not dangerous crazy yet.
no, it's just weird, crazy, but good for them. If they want to protest, they're not hurting anyone. They just look weird and funny, and therefore, people I need to get away from. So yeah,
Yeah.
this is Toronto, and God help Toronto.
Yep.
Anyway, that's a good way to end the show.
All right, guys. Well, that was our episode 23. Sorry that we're both a little bit out of it. This took a while to get to, but hopefully we'll get the other one more on time and we'll both be more energized for it. But okay, so I guess peace. See y'all either on open mic or next week.
Cheers.